Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let's start today's session. Greetings, everyone. My name is Solimar Salas, Vice President of Content, Innovation, and Audiences at the Museum of Latin American Art. We welcome you today, Wednesday, July 31st, 2024, to this edition of MOLAA Zoom Project in conversation with Leo Núñez. MOLA's head of curatorship, Gabriela Urtiaga, talks with the artist about his work. This edition of MOLAA Zoom Project is part of the exhibition Arteônica, Art, Science, and Technology in Latin America that will be presented at MOLAA in September of 2024. We also thank the Earl B. Miller Foundation, the Getty Foundation, California Humanities, the Arts Council for Long Beach, and especially the California Arts Council for their support of the educational programming of the Museum of Latin American Art. The main language of this session will be Spanish. We will have interpretation in English. In each chapter, the conversation between the artists and our MOLA head of curatorship focuses on a series of work of art that requires a detailed inspection and a deliberate process of contemplation and exploration, delving into the ideas surrounding the creation of the works, their sources of research and inspiration, in an effort to immerse ourselves in the world of the artists. In this chapter of MOLA Zoom Project, we interview the renowned artist Leo Núñez. Leo Núñez is an Argentinian artist born in Buenos Aires in 1975. He holds a master's degree and is director and professor of a master's degree in technology and aesthetics of technological art at UNTREF. His previous training includes a journey in different universities, technical careers like systems engineer at the UTN, Universidad Tecnológica Nacional, as well as artistic careers such as image and sound design at UVA, the University of Buenos Aires, a Bachelor of Electronic Arts at UNITREF, the Universidad Nacional de 13 de Febrero. He is co-founder of Espacio Nixo, a space dedicated to the dissemination of technological knowledge of artists, schools, and children. He also works as technical coordinator of Bienal Sur. His artistic careers includes internationally a Vida 10.0 award for completed work, a Vida 12.0 award for incentives for the production of work. At the local level, he has won a first prize at the Salón Nacional, two Mamba Fundación Telefónica awards at the national level, second UNTREF award for electronic arts, an honorable mention in the 2019 art technology competition of the National Fund for the Arts, and another honorable mention from the Itaú Award. He has also won a scholarship awarded by CCEBA, the Cultural Center of Spain in Buenos Aires, a residency at DX Arts, Center for Digital Arts and Experimental Media at the University of Washington, and Becar 2018. Leo has participated in a large number of exhibitions, both individual and group, not only in Argentina, but also in Latin America, Europe, and the United States, highlighting his participation in Arco Spain, Cyberfest, at the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, titled What's on Your Mind? An exhibition held at World Bank, Washington, D.C., SIGGRAPH in 2017 in California, for participations in the File Festival in Brazil, Bill Center at UCLA, California, DX Arts at UW in Washington, Voltage Festival and Propaganda Festival in Colombia, Laboratorio de Arte Alameda in Mexico, Fundación Telefónica Argentina and Perú, Arte BA, CCK, Usina del Arte, Museo Nacional de Bellas Artes Neuquén, El Obrador, Centro Cultural San Martín de los Andes, Museo de la Memoria Rosario Maker Space in Chile, among others. It can be mentioned that Leo has been selected for the Japan Media Arts Festival and the New Media Festival in Miami. Throughout the artistic career, he has also had solo and group exhibitions at galleries such as Galería Pasaje 17, Raw Arts, and Asil Art in Argentina. Thank you, Solimar. Thank you to all the team at MOLA. Hello. Welcome to MOLA. Dear Leo, it's a great joy. Thank you for opening the doors to your studio to us. We're very happy. Well, I'm the one that's happy. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to be in touch with the people that's participating. And thank you for the opportunity. As an artist, the best that can happen to us is to be able to dialogue and um, communicate what is our inspiration, what we're working on, and that is very gratifying. So thank you so much. Well, we're also very happy because you're going to be part of our next exhibit of Arteônica that talks about the intersection of art, science, and technology in Latin America. So you are one of the artists that will be here in a residence. You will have an artistic residence creating a work for this new exhibit with the support of the Getty Foundation. So it's really beautiful to be able to talk to you and to reflect. I was thinking that it was really good to be able to talk to you to explore those spaces that happen in this interface concept in contemporary art that can also help us understand and think about that intersection and in that dimension of the new technologies within the contemporary art in Latin America. So I would like you to introduce us to your creative process, to the questions that take you to the exploration of this wonderful dimension that's also very entertaining, where the participant is a key um, figure in your work of art. Thank you, Gabby. Yes, when I started working with art and technology, the first questions come up wondering about whether we are able to create technologic work in within the urban centers or in isolated areas of Argentina. So, how can we produce technologic work without being overwhelmed by the technology that is imposed from the center? That's one of the first questions. Is it possible? Obviously, it is possible, but always trying to dodge a little bit the homogenization of the culture that is given to us by the use of artifacts or technology. So that's in the beginning, that's as a start, the first thing that I work with in my work of art. That's one of the biggest questions. And then we start understanding technological art in Latin America as a space of resistance against the technological overwhelming um, the symbolic one as well. So there's a lot of footprints of that. I leave certain um, clues of that in all of my work. And generally, most of my work has something to do with a socio-political aspect and economical aspect of something that has happened in Latin America or in Argentina. Sometimes the things that happen in Argentina are easily communicated to the rest of Latin America. So that's my thought. I'm in this territory. So if you would allow me, I like this. For those of you that don't know this person, I'd like to tell you about this person called Rodolfo Ulch. He's a thinker from the 70s in Argentina, um, negated by the academy. He's one of those authors that people don't teach you about him, but you run into him, you find him. It's one of those people that you discover. And he used to say, this author used to say that the thought gravitates within the land that you inhabitate. Back in the 70s, he was already thinking like that. And part of the thought has to do with new technologies. And I would like to add to that that thinking permeates from the bottom, and it has to do with the authors and the works as well. It's not just thought. So, leaving from that main thought about how we can escape that effort of homogenization of the entire planet, how can we find shelter in our own territory? So from there is where I start building the different works, each of them with its own qualities. Yes, what you're saying is very interesting because in this exploration of and this research we've done about technology and art in Latin America, what we're going to see in MOLAA are artists from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Mexico. And one of the things that caught my eye is this dimension that you are suggesting in your work, and that is very present there, where there's a reflection of exchange between those two universes, the scientific one and the artistic aesthetic, but that is not free consciously from a strong content, whether it is philosophical, political, social, or ethical. And what you're sharing with us is that from that dimension, from the south of the continent, there's a reaffirmation. And I like what you say about the way of doing things. And you are an artist who works mainly with what we identify as low tech. And I would like you to explain that to us and introduce that to us so that we, after that, can go in depth to your work. And we have this special selection for this talk today. Well, what I try to do is to mix technologies and to situate them in a specific time of thought. Let's say if I'm going to work with certain thoughts from the 70s and these kind of situations in the 70s or 80s, then I'm going to try to use technology from that time specifically and not let myself go with the current technology. That's the idea. I call that trying to escape this kind of technologies instead of, where we let ourselves to be taken by the new technologies. So I'd rather accompany those other technologies from those other times. So a lot of the times in my work, you see what we very generically call low tech, but in reality, what's happening is that I am using technology that accompanies the discourse. So I try to select, or I select, what kind of technology is going to tell the story or tell the work better. Not because of the simplicity of such and such technology, but actually sometimes because using more precarious technology brings other kinds of implications instead of buying an object that's already there. Sometimes that's what happens. I crash with the idea of giving technology a second opportunity as long as it helps me tell the story that I'm narrating a lot better. Well, and in order to be able to introduce ourselves in your work, we had selected Propagaciones. This is a work from 2007 where you use this system of cell automatons controlled by robots. How is that? It's one of the first works from many years ago, but these are sort of fundamental when I started all these thinking. This there's a bit of a scientific concept. Cell automaton is a series of beings or cells related in between, and each of their behaviors depends on their neighbor, depends on the state of the neighbor, depending on the cell that it's to the side of that one. So that's how they behave. Generally, the cell automaton is a concept from the computers of the 70s, very binary. Back then, the thought was still very binary. Cells were either open or shut, ones and zeros. That was the thought back then. And this behavior, there's a lot of cell automatons that have been very studied, and it's the base of what we called artificial living or life. What I did in this work, Propagaciones, was to materialize a system of cell automatons with the same rules that a computer automaton has, but made with the technology I had at hand. Basically, I materialized this in the shape of a robot with engines that I found from old DVDs. with certain metal elements that I had at home, and I kept trying to find more. I did a colony of 50 robots that were the same, and the technology that I used, I decided to place it in plain view. In '07, sometimes reaching technology, because where I come from, it wasn't that easy. So trying to generate knowledge and share how I use technology seemed important to me. That's why in April we had the black box. No, that's why I wanted, sorry, to open the black box and show as an aesthetic element the elements necessary for the work. There is no element in the object that is decorative. Everything is functional. Everything is there to be able to create this to make this machine work. This robot has a light sensor, and when another robot illuminates the robot next to that one starts moving, and when that moves, it illuminates the next one, and then it starts moving. So it starts to generate an internal behavior in the system where each element depends on what happens to the one next to it. That's one thing. The other thing is that all the pieces are made by hand. I like to think about technology. I'm not so much, not as efficient or as efficacious as we're used to. But thinking about the author's footprint, thinking about leaving the footprint within the technological work, because finally, at the end, the technology erases the footprint of whoever created that, but I like to exploit that. All these objects that you see are made by hand, and they have the same circuits, but they are assembled in a different way. Uh, Even, as much as they are created the same, well, they are created individually. If you come closer, you can see that they are the same, but they are individual. So that's an idea of sculpture made by hand. The object, the sculpture made by hand with its deficiencies, its human deficiencies, but systematically functional. So this work has an award called Vida. It's an award awarded in Spain. It was prized in the 10th edition, which is wonderful. In the 2000s, I think this was in '07. Where artificial life is what we today call AI. Back then, it was this moment. And the award that I received is exactly because um, I was not only talking about artificial life and intelligence, but also because I conceptualized the materiality of that work and the objects to my technological context. It's a context in which the in Argentinian industry was still in the process of growth, and it's still very similar to that of the '70s. It we were still building things in a very artisanal way. So all of that took me to create these robots in that way. It's not just utilizing low tech by choice, by saying, well, I work with low tech, but it was also because those technologies would let me tell the story of the work a lot better. So I select that kind of technology according to the concept that I'm working with at any given time. I'm not sure if that's clear. Yes, of course, super clear. Thank you so much. Another thing that you tell also through propagaciones, but we can move on to the second work we chose. It's a game of life where this is a series you've been developing since '08, and we're going to be lucky enough to be able to experiment and see you in action and see you working here in MOLAA during Arteônica, is that from this work, and you will tell us all the process that you've done, you also place the focus and the attention in the hegemony of repetition, of a scheme of algorithmic domination. Here you are um, placing an homage to the series Game of Life that happened in the 70s. Right. This is a very famous algorithm of artificial life. Actually, it's one of the most studied ones. It has the, how can I say this? This algorithm possesses a quality that says it doesn't really matter how you started. You can start it at random. You always arrive to the same known patterns. And today we're still discovering new repetitive patterns. Some coils that have 4 or 5 phases and then they start repeating. So that's why it's so famous, and that's why I like it so much. It's that's my most nerd part aspect of all of these. So in this work, I started working with the object, the relay object, and that's the first binary object that man started using around 1800s. And that's the one that was used in the first calculators, the first computers, that has a very particular clicking sounds for those of us that are of a certain age. That sound in old cars, for example, right? It's like a clack clack sound. So that's that object. That's that relay. What I started doing was materializing this algorithm with the technology that existed in the 70s, and the relay is one of them. So once again, we have the handmade object, and it's the footprint of the author, and this idea of remaking the work one over and over and over. I think that this kind of works don't start when you finish. They start when I start producing them, almost like it was a performance, a live performance. Here in my country, we, not for nothing, but every time we have a change in the government, it would seem that we have like something, each government comes to restart everything. And from that idea of of continuous rebuilding that we have here as a context, I work with that idea that every time I'm going to do the work, I start again from zero to redo it, and I do the algorithm again, and I do a little bit more of technology, because there's different ways of doing things with the passing of time. It's a little bit easier, but the construction of each of these pieces that form every cell of this work, it's that's the part that's behind the work before I even start the work. Even before we turn it on. Once we turn it on, we start working with the idea that these mathematical algorithms are like a closed box that don't take into account the disturbances. They are thought mathematically, and that's it. So I like to think that what I do is to open the system and allow the bodies that come to visit the work to generate disturbances. And those disturbances, with the aim of making the system remember that there's something beyond mankind itself. There's something that cannot be predictable. The whole system is predicted by a series of internal rules, and I want to incorporate that part that's not predictable, that can disturb the system, and that part is us. With all these things we have today with artificial intelligence and all of that, keeping in mind that there's always something that works in parallel to the system, which is the human bodies, and we make decisions, and we can disturb all of these that has been established mathematically. That's wonderful that you bring that to the conversation because it's now with AI, what is going to happen in the future, what's happening to us in the present, and remembering as well the dialogue between machines and human that you make really evident in your work. I think right now we're seeing a child playing and experimenting something new through your work. And how is this like teaching part of yours? You're an artist, but you also teach, you promote science and technology in different generations. Tell us a little bit about that experience and everything that you get from that exchange. Yes, thank you for that question. Teaching is something that really goes it's really interesting for me, not only the teaching of art but also teaching technology and teaching in general. Today I am the director of a major here in arts and technology in Argentina. It's a career that I am taking after it's been in existence for 10 years. It's the same university that shaped me, and now I am a director there. I belong to this institution for many years now, and it's great the acknowledgement, sorry, that the university does of me. But I'm also a co-founder of a work called Espacio Nixo that was mentioned at the beginning, and this is a space where we are dedicated to educating children. A lot of the times here, technological education is not within reach for everybody, so everything that we do, everything we create in Espacio Nixo is open and free for whoever wants to participate. We started that about 15 years ago. It's a civil association. We are about 16 teachers that work continuously in this association. And not just that, we've been working all over the country, going to all different kinds of places, working with other foundations that help us and fund us. But we've been also for a time now, we've been doing also collaboration with the teachers so that they can take this knowledge to the classroom and talking about technology from the action from doing and playing kids in the role of producers, not users. There's something typical in teaching of technologies that places the student as the user of a given technology, but we prefer, I'm being very general, but we prefer placing kids as producers more than users. The idea is that they can start generating their imaginary since from here, from the south of Latin America, to create their own technology that's framed by our own territory and our own needs, so that in the future maybe we can have engineers and producers of technology according to our needs and not users that use a given technology by the system. That's our philosophy, more or less. I'm being really general, but that's part of the philosophy of what we're trying to do. No, that's wonderful. Imagine all the workshops that we're going to be able to do over here with the education team and all your knowledge. So we're very happy. The next work that we wanted you to tell us about is that changing space of 2010. And there you go into the behavior of the market and you start working with the different variations between Argentinian peso, dollar, and euro. Well, it's Argentina is very special. It has very special features. There's a Nobel Prize called Simon Kuzners that says there's four kinds of countries, speaking economically. There are developed countries, countries in development. We have Japan's economy that nobody knows why it grows, but it's always growing. And then there's the Argentinian economy that nobody knows why it never grows. So here in Argentina, we say we are 50 million economists, right? Um, in order to be here, to survive here, you have to have this specific knowledge, right? Because the economy in Argentina, it's very dollarized. It means the pattern of value is more about the value of the dollar our within our currency instead of in comparison to gold, which is what usually happens. Um, we have different kinds of dollars as well over here. For us, we don't have just $1. Here we have the official dollar, the saving dollar, the blue dollar, the dollar that you count liquid, right? It's impossible to explain. We have crypto dollar and then the dollar, Qatar dollar. So we have different variations of the same dollar. So the currency market for us is very important. So in the morning, we turn on the TV and we check the weather and the dollar value because that can have an effect in everything. So that's why I'm concerned with the economic status of my country. I have several works of art that have something to do with this. And I was just looking at certain information this morning. Inflation of the last year in the US was 3.4%. That was scandalous. Our latest inflation for, last year, we've had a 250% inflation in Argentina. So that is basic for us for our day to day. The value of the dollar last year, for example, in 2022, at the end of 2022, it was 196 pesos for dollar. And by the end of 2023, it was 826. Four times as much. So with that economical context, I'm sorry, I'm talking about economy when we're talking about art, but within that economical context is where I make this kind of work. The Espacio Cambiario is a work of 2008 where we also had a lot of economic variation, where my main idea was being able to materialize the behavior of the currency market. In order to do that, I studied or did a crossover or found um, the science that studies the behavior of animals. There's a behavior called aggressivity behavior. That's a behavior that's present in all animals, even in man. And it establishes how aggressive an animal is. And the more aggressive an animal is, the more it'll be able to gain territory and the more resources it'll have. That was my starting point for this subject. So what I did was I created a series of robots like the ones that you see on screen that have lights and sensors. And I created three colors: white, green, blue. Green is dollar, blue is euro, white is peso. That was the idea. And linked to the exchange market. For example, if a currency went up, like dollar, the green lights would emerge brighter and the other values would get smaller. And that one shining more would start to try to gain territory over the other ones and be aggressive. And those that lost some value started becoming more submissive and escaping the brighter ones. That was the idea. So in that space, we could visualize the behavior of the currency exchange market, compare it to the aggressivity behavior materialized in these robots that were moving around the territory. So all of this to tell you the story of this work. What I see also is that you are like an anthropologist. You go deeper and deeper in the different um, corners of a situation of your context, and then somehow you materialize or make it visible in your work. And another very important piece of your production is Rostros from 2006, where You talk about this terrible era of Argentina during the latest dictatorship from 1976 to 1986, and you selected the faces of those people that were tortured and that disappeared in Argentina during that time. And you place the person that is going to find your work, you place them in interaction with them. So tell us about this very powerful work that also reflects the memory of that time. Yeah, these are painful works. I call them painful. They remind me of things. So, Faces or Rostros is one of my first works. I did this when we had 30-year anniversary of the latest dictatorship, the one in 1976. So that's the context. One of the things that would happen back then was that we had 30,000 missing people, the people that disappeared during that dictatorship. The government would go into the homes of people that they thought were um, against them, and they simply would take those people, and many of them we never heard from again. They just disappeared. But there were some photos left behind of some of them, and so we it became iconic, this idea of the faces of our disappeared ones in the demonstrations, and every time you ask about them, and we demand to know. So for this work, what I took was television of the time as well, those black and white ones from the 70s, the one that you see on screen. And I placed a series of faces, all the faces of the disappeared, that appear and disappear like a memory box that remembers and forgets again and remembers once more. And among them, and sometimes you can tell, among them, we also see the faces of the people that go see the work. So the system is doing something very similar to what happened back then, that they take the image, they suck up the image, and they make you part of the system whether you want or not, because even as a passive way you participate in the system. And it also works as a box in which you appear, it remembers you for a while, and then you disappear, so it makes you part of the system whether you want it or not. And that the intention is to come to reflect about the fact that whether you were a disappeared person or not, you may have been part of that system that didn't see at that time what was happening socially. These are works that bring a certain sadness for those of us that lived those years. Yes, of course. And also for the new generations, so that they can learn and see what happened, and so that they don't forget. That's why the topic of memory is so important, of course. But Gabby, this detail, and now I'm going back to the whole body of work, all the technology. For example, here we did uh, this in '06. We didn't have cell phones or anything. This was all analogical, and it was the same technology utilized by the military in the 80s. So we used all of that kind of technology. Everything was so slow that I myself could check myself with, my own body. I could stand up in front of the camera and then come back and look at it on the screen. So um, beyond using the latest technology or creating technological systems that didn't exist back then, the work doesn't die because of the use of that technology. That's not the essential. The technology is not the essential. The discourse goes through a different place, and that other place is what's important. That's why these works end up lasting with time, and they don't disappear when that technology becomes part of the routine. That's why I'm going back to the beginning. So how to create technological works in Latin America? Well, one of the ways or the strategies is not to fall in the trap of using the technologies we already know, but rather using the technology that we can have access to and giving that work some added value. Everything I think about my work goes along those lines. Yes, no, that's wonderful, and we have more works that we'd like to present, but I also want people to be able to have the opportunity of asking questions. So we can select the last one for you to share this with us. It could be Los Recuerdos from 2016. And you were also saying that forgetting is part of the process of memorizing. And we were lucky enough to present it in 2018, I think, at the Kitchener Cultural Center. It was a success. Everybody was leaving behind their feelings and sensations in this machine for writing. So tell us how you did this work of the super memory. Who is the you were also making tribute to Borges, the Argentinian writer, and then how do you do this interaction with the audience? Thank you. Yes, the memories of 2016, if I'm not mistaken, a few more years, and again, technology in a context. I based this in a story of Borges. The first word in the story, it's called Funes el Memorioso. Back in the 40s, Funes was already um, saying that the idea of remembering everything is not as great. And now talking about these ideas of data. Funes, this very particular person from Uruguay, he could not forget anything. He would remember everything. And in one of the passages, it tells you the problems that he has. Read the text, is wonderful. And one of the things that he talks about is that when he wanted to remember a day, since he remembered everything, that would take him to another day because he remembered everything that would happen. So what I did in this work called The Memories or Los Recuerdos was actually utilizing an Olivetti typewriter from the 40s, from the era of Borges, and the machine is from my mother's typewriting teacher. It's been in my house forever. That's an object that I grew up with. I restored it and everything. So it was present in this work. And people could write whatever. And in an LED screen, a relay, these relays that I like to use, you could see it there. Now, it had the characteristic that the machine would also remember, like Funes used to do. So you couldn't type something and then the next you could write something and the next day at the same time millisecond it would type it again. It would remember everything like Funes used to do. And now in this particular era, let me give you the context. In Buenos Aires, after having the same political party for 12 years, there was a change. For every change that happened, there was an internal debate and problem for every decision that was made. So back then, I thought it was interesting that people could have a word, that they could say something. So somehow this work, what it does is to give the other person the power of talking, and that whatever they are saying can be remembered at least for one day for whoever comes after. So having someone be able to listen or read the thought that someone else had right at that same time the day before where you are standing. So it's like, well, I'm going to write something and then the machine starts typing because back there at the same time, someone was there yesterday telling me something I can read right now. It was a little bit of a game as well to allow the other one to talk for a little moment. It was a wonderful experience And I think that what you expose in your work, the being able to give someone else the word, but their presence as well, the physical presence of the human, has a great impact in this use of technology in all these wonderful works that you're producing and have been producing along a really wonderful career. It makes us very, very happy. Thank you for everything. And now, Daniel and Solimar, can you let us know if there's a question from the audience so that we can continue this talk with them? Hello, once again, Leo. Thank you for sharing. Gabriela, wonderful questions. We have one comment from Amabel, and the question is, how would you explain the project Game of Life to children using their everyday life, using examples of things they do every day? Well, it's very difficult. If I'm thinking about the work, remember you mentioned there was a child there using the work that was in St. Petersburg, so that child spoke Russian. So imagine my English is pretty bad. Imagine my Russian. It's impossible. So there's something about the work, it tells its own story. You don't have to tell a lot. I understand that the different layers of reading from a child won't be the same, but this idea of placing the body in front of the algorithm, you understand that very quickly. And in terms of children, sometimes we play games, we make games that have to do that introduce them to um, computing. Sometimes we do these kinds of games where we stand a lot of children there, each of them uh, stretches out their arms, and when someone moves their arm towards the other one does the same towards the one next to him. So everybody has to pay attention how they're moving in relation to their neighbor. So that's a little bit of the idea of complexity and behavior. It's a complex behavior that maybe cannot be predicted because each person has its own random behavior plus the behavior given by the neighbor. So that's something that can get us started in thinking about what happens inside the computer. I'm talking about small children that can't really mathematically maybe discover things, but with games with the body, they start understanding the complexity of what can be happening within a system. So we in our association start doing that kind of game. That takes me to a question. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna leave my question for later. We're getting more questions here. From Patrick Moore, he has a question in the Q&A. He says, first, I want to say that you've blown my mind with the creativity of your work. Number two, and I'm asking you as a docent here at the museum, what kind of message do you think we should focus on when we are doing our visits with students? And so it goes more with between K to 12, right? It's elementary level school. That's some of our main audiences here in the school. Well, for me, it's vital to understand at that age that technology isn't necessarily the way it's given to us. So breaking that barrier between user and producer at that age, that's a very important moment. Thinking about authorship. I'm going to give you a small example. Everyone here lived your story. That's not my example. Someone said that. So think about how your neighbor across is presented. That neighbor that disassembles toys and reassembles them as their own, and they present us as the villain. Whereas Andy in Toy Story is presented as a good kid that plays the way he's supposed to do. Whereas the authorship is more within the kid across the street. So the industry itself is already saying how we should use things, whereas in reality, disassembling something and reassembling it the way I want, using my own thought, is a lot more important and creative and gives a lot more space to game and to play instead of just using them the way they're given to us. That's an excellent uh, segue to allow the visitors to create beyond the script that the industry gives us. And there's another point that I would like to make, the idea of immediacy. All the like technological thoughts right now, it's like everything is immediate now. When you see a work like the one we're going to bring and another one that has a different format to the one in the video, we're going to have not only a larger format, but it's a different one as well. There are simulations I'm making here are turning out really well. There's something there about the footprint of the making. When you look at a work like that that has like a ton of relays with like 3,000 different soldering points, it gives you a perspective of the idea that technology is not made instantaneously. You need the time of development to get to where you want to go. And also to have this idea that a technological project isn't made instantaneously. It's something that takes several days and months of pre-production. That's also vital. If not, it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm frustrated. I can't, whatever. Let's move on. I take my cell phone and I start playing. That's not the ideal way. So let's create this idea of patience. We have to involve the body. We have to work. It goes little by little. We're going to make it. That's another one of the important concepts and values that kids lose nowadays. We have one last question from Leslie Jimenez. Greetings. Have you had any moment in which all of a sudden the component in a work stops working? Do you have like a stock of pieces from the technology of the 70s? How do you solve that? How do you solve that situation that may happen with technology? Well, one of my goals or one of the things that I've established, because I told you in terms of like budget here, the budgets are always super low. All my works, everything you see in my work is made by me. So I know how to solder a tiny little thing and I know how the whole computer system is made. I make everything. Not because of ego, but because of need. Because I had to learn how to do each of those things. Generally, when something breaks, I can repair it. The typewriter, for example, it's full of sensors on the underneath that I've placed them one by one. I articulated them one by one, and admirably, new technologies have broken way more often than that typewriter, and that typewriter hasn't broken hardly ever. And we've used it. It was in a place called Technopolis, which is a huge center that opens about 6 months a year. It was working there for 2 years, nonstop, without breaking. And kids go by and use it all the time. And we haven't had um a single problem. Generally, kids are a bit more aggressive with the machine, but that machine never breaks. They are very tough. And other technologies, whenever they've broken, yes, I usually have parts. I usually have backups of different things. I've been lucky that sometimes I sold work and I sell them with like spare parts and manuals. And the other thing is most of the components I use can be bought very easily, commonly. There's nothing too specific. They're parts that you can easily buy and replace very simply. So in general, if they break, yeah, some things may break, especially those that are mechanical, but it doesn't go beyond just changing some simple little part. So it's like the warranty from the company. The day after the warranty expired, that's when things start breaking, right? Well, I'm just generalizing, but we've all lived that. But it's very interesting because within the concept of the museum, the area of conservation, we're always thinking about, how can we make sure that that work has a long life, whether the artist is available or not. So I liked knowing that you also have a manual, a user manual, and a preservation one to a certain point as well. Actually, I think it's a debt from electronic art, and if you're working on that, I would contribute. There should have to be some kind of protocol to preserve those works. I've had to sometimes repair works here from Adelo and Marta Milpin. Right now, actually, I have this work from the 60s from Marta Milpin in my shop that we are restoring for the second time. And there's no protocol that can guide artists at some point about what to keep and how. Because sometimes when we produce without the afterthought of what's going to happen after a certain time to the work. So maybe having some kind of a journal protocol steps to follow to keep to take into account when we're producing to be able to find out how to preserve the work adequately. If you're going to do any kind of effort like that, I'd love to collaborate with that because I think it's important. That can be a panel for our next session of the Association of Conservators. So thank you, everybody. We're at the end of the hour. Thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you, Leo, Daniel. And I also want to invite you to join us in August to the next MOLAA Zoom project, where we will interview Cecilia Mone, another artist that will participate in Arteônica. And Gabriela? Well, we're very happy that we'll be able to see you very soon here in LA, in Long Beach at MOLA. We're very grateful with you to all the work that we've been doing together to be able to present your work in the best way possible, your installation as part of our Theonica. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll continue. We'll keep on learning. We'll keep on looking for inspiration. So thank you very much, Leo, for your time, for your generosity. Thank you. It's really easy to work with your team. It's everything is very easy to do. So I'm the one that's very grateful. And thank you for giving me the space to talk about what I do. And thank you to the participants that stayed to listen to us. And we will meet very soon. And I'll be there to talk to anybody. Just say hi and we can chat. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.